Hello there, everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR Army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. Now, looking at the title and thumbnail of this video, you might be a little bit surprised to see me talking about a topic like this, a topic that a lot of people either find completely boring, or they find not interesting at all, or they are squeamish about it because it involves the IRS and taxes. But today we have something interesting that I recently discovered that relates to an older video that I did. I have on screen here a IRS publication on the official IRS website. The publication is called Publication 526, and this is a 2022 updated version of it. When you go down a little bit, you find Publication 526 main contents, and the big headline here says, organizations that qualify to receive deductible contributions. And underneath that is the first and only sentence of a paragraph that says, you can deduct your contributions only if you make them to a qualified organization. Sounds completely harmless, right? What if I told you that in previous versions of Publication 526, there was more than one sentence in this paragraph here? What if I told you that the sentence they deleted says that organizations other than churches and governments have to apply to the IRS, apply as 501c3s, in order to be a qualified organization that you can make contributions to? And you do not have to take my word for this. Back in 2019, October of 2019, I put out a video on my BitChute channel titled, Do Churches Need to Register as a 501c3 Organization? I recently backed up this video on my JoshWho TV and Quarter channels. Links to those versions will be in the description box below. But we're going to start at the 14-minute and 4-second mark of this older video, and we're going to see what Publication 526 used to say. Let's start reading here.
Now let's look at the next section. Churches are automatically tax deductible. And what about tax deductibility? Doesn't a church still need to become a 501c3 so that contributions to it can be taken as a tax deduction? The answer is no. According to IRS Publication 526, organizations that qualify to receive deductible contributions. You can deduct your contributions only if you make them to a qualified organization. To become a qualified organization, most organizations other than churches and governments, as described below, must apply to the IRS. In the IRS's own words, a church is automatically tax deductible. Now the question is this an accurate quotation of IRS Publication 526? So as you can see here, guys, I have IRS Publication 526 on screen. Link to it will be in the description box below. And you see it says Publication 526 main content. Section titled Organizations that Qualify to Receive Deductible Contributions. And under that section it says, you can deduct your contributions only if you make them to a qualified organization. Most organizations other than churches and governments must apply to the IRS to become a qualified organizations. So when it says most organizations other than churches and governments must apply to the IRS to become a qualified organization, that is clearly saying that churches do not actually need to apply to the IRS to be a qualified organization.
So, as we could see in that clip, back in 2019, IRS Publication 526 on the IRS website used to say that only qualified organizations could have contributions made for them, and in order to be a qualifying organization, organizations other than churches and governments had to apply to the IRS. They cut that entire second sentence out if you go to IRS Publication 526 today. Now, why, oh why, would the IRS 3 years later remove that second sentence from this publication? What does this accomplish? Well, it gives off the impression that churches are not automatically tax exempt and they have to apply to the IRS as a 501c3 in order for you to be able to make a tax deductible contribution to churches. But back as early as 2019, as recently as 2019, the IRS website publication 526 used to say that churches were automatically exempt and that they didn't have to apply to the IRS in order for you to make a contribution to them that is tax deductible. Now, fortunately for us, there is another IRS publication as well as a US law that actually makes it clear that churches are automatically tax exempt and you don't have to apply for a 501c3 if you're a church. How do we know that this is true despite the fact that they changed publication 526? When you turn to IRS Publication 557, you see a section titled Organizations Not Required to File Form 1023 or Form 1023-EZ. And in the above paragraph, it's a note from the IRS that says that organizations filing these forms have to satisfy all the requirements of Section 501c3. So in other words, most of the time, if your organization is a 501c3, you have to file these forms out. Now, it says here, some organizations aren't required to file Form 1023 or 1023-EZ. These include churches, interchurch organizations of local units of a church, conventions or associations of churches, or integrated auxiliaries of a church, such as a men's or women's organization, religious school, mission society, or youth group. So in other words, if you are a church, you don't have to file 1023 or 1023-EZ. And then it says in the second bullet point, any organization normally having annual gross receipts of not more than $5,000 also do not have to file these forms. It says that these organizations are exempt automatically if they meet the requirements of Section 501c3. So, if you are a church, you do not have to file as a 501c3, and as a result, you don't have to file a Form 1023 or Form 1023-EZ, according to these IRS publications. Furthermore, when you go to the Cornell Law School website, you pull up US Code 508, which says special rules with respect to Section 501c3 organizations. Bullet point A says that new organizations must notify Secretary that they are applying for recognition of 501c3 status. Point B says presumption that organizations are private foundations. But then you get to bullet point C, exceptions. Number 1, mandatory exceptions. So subsections A and B shall not apply to churches, their integrated auxiliaries, and conventions or associations of churches, or any organization which is not a private foundation, and the gross receipts of which in each taxable year are normally not more than $5,000. So in other words, if you are a church, sections A and B do not apply for you, because a church is automatically tax exempt. Therefore, they don't have to file as a 501c3, according to this little bit of U.S. law in the Cornell Law School website. So according to U.S. Code 508 and IRS Publication 557, churches are automatically tax exempt. They do not have to file as 501c3s, and they do not have to fill out tax forms 1023 or 1023-EZ because they're automatically exempt. But this recent change to Publication 526 on the IRS website is making me think that the government is slowly but surely starting to basically erase any evidence whatsoever that churches don't have to register as a 501c3 in order to be tax deductible. Why would they erase such evidence? They would do it because if you're a 501c3, you're under the thumb of the state. You're a creature of the state. And so if the IRS can delete all the evidence that churches are automatically tax exempt and they don't have to file as 501c3s and be creatures of the state, well, you can just fill in the blanks right there. And I've been listening to the chatter of churches in my area, and it's actually pretty well known by some pastors who are paying attention to stuff like this that one of the ways that the government is going to come after Christians and churches in the future is that they're going to yank their tax-exempt status, which, since most churches are registered as 501c3s, that's going to be pretty crippling to them in a lot of cases. And I think stuff like this that I've documented in this video is the first step of the government and the anti-Christian people in it to attack Christians and churches even more than they already do. I think this is their first step in weaponizing tax laws against churches.